Remember those little metal whiskers mounted on your car that brushed against the curb as a warning? Or the cars that blended wood and wheels to give you the feel of a cozy cabin on wheels? Today, we're counting down 10 more automotive innovations that didn't survive the test of time.
Back in the day, drivers controlled their headlights with a switch built into the floorboard. It debuted in 1927, once the two-filament headlight bulb made the old depressible headlight unnecessary. Mounted within easy reach of the driver's foot, it let people flip between low and high beams without ever letting go of the wheel, and the roomy floorboard area had plenty of space for these bulkier, tougher switches. By the 1970s, American automakers started copying European styling trends and relocated the dimmer switch to the steering column. The last vehicles built with a foot-operated dimmer switch were the 1991 Ford F-Series and E-Series vans. Even after it disappeared from new vehicles, the foot dimmer stuck around in classic car culture, and restorers still hunt for original parts to keep old trucks period correct. Some collectors argue it was actually safer than a stock-mounted lever, since your hands never left 10 and 2 while your foot did the work. Today it survives mostly as a quirky footnote, a reminder of how differently engineers once thought about where controls should live inside a cabin.
Vinyl roofs got their start in the 1920s as a way to shield passengers from the weather, styled to resemble old horse-drawn carriage tops made of leather and canvas. By the 1950s, manufacturers were using vinyl coverings to give ordinary sedans a convertible-like appearance, and the look exploded in popularity through the 1960s and 70s, especially stateside. These roofs came in a range of colors and textures, including a bamboo-style finish on the 1953 Kaiser Dragon. You'll still spot vinyl roofs on hearses and limousines today, since they conveniently hide the seams left behind when a car's body is stretched and lengthened. The trend eventually faded because vinyl trapped moisture against the metal underneath, causing rust to creep in unnoticed until it was too late. Insurance companies and used car buyers grew wary of hidden corrosion, which pushed automakers to phase the option out by the late 1980s. Even so, a small niche of restomod builders still special order vinyl tops to recreate that unmistakable retro silhouette.
Known officially as Stereo 8, this audio format ruled from the mid-1960s through the early 80s, especially in vehicles. Bill Lear of Learjet fame developed it in 1964 alongside Ford and General Motors. What made it stand out was its continuous playback loop, meaning drivers never had to eject and flip a tape. A cartridge ran roughly 80 minutes before looping back to the start, with no rewind function available. It caught on fast across the US and Canada, and by the late 60s it dominated the American consumer electronics market. A handful of bands still press 8-track releases today as novelty collector's items. Part of what killed the format was its awkward habit of splitting songs mid-track whenever a loop ended, something the smaller and more flexible cassette tape avoided entirely. By the mid-1970s, cassettes were cheaper to produce and easier to record onto at home. And once car stereo manufacturers switched their factory installs, 8-track's decline became unstoppable almost overnight. These were designed to boost safety at a time when most people simply weren't buckling up. Volkswagen debuted the first version in the 1975 Golf. 2 years later, federal regulators announced that by 1983, every new car would need either airbags or automatic belts. That mandate pushed manufacturers toward the automatic belt route, though plenty of drivers found them awkward to use, and they often clashed with child safety seats. The government reversed course in 1981, dropping the requirement. Ironically, statistics showed that cars equipped with automatic belts had a noticeably lower fatality rate in crashes than those with standard belts. The motorized versions, which glided along a track in the doorframe, became infamous for jamming in cold weather or trapping passengers if the mechanism failed. Manufacturers eventually pivoted to airbags paired with conventional manual belts instead, a combination that proved simpler, cheaper, and far more reliable, effectively ending the automatic belt experiment by the early 1990s.
A defining look of 1950s and 60s American cars, tail fins were meant to evoke speed and futurism. The trend kicked off with the 1948 Cadillac, styled after the twin rudders of a P-38 fighter plane, and the fins only grew from there. The 1959 Cadillac Eldorado sported fins that mimicked jet stabilizers. Designers saw them as a nod to the space-age optimism of the era.
But public taste shifted by the mid-60s, and automakers gradually phased the style out. Occasionally, you'll still catch a subtle fin-inspired touch on modern car designs. Beyond aesthetics, some engineers actually claimed the fins offered a slight aerodynamic benefit at highway speed, helping stabilize the rear end, though most historians consider this more marketing than measurable fact. As fuel prices climbed and buyers began favoring smaller, more efficient vehicles, the flashy, metal-heavy fins simply became a symbol of an excess the industry could no longer justify.
Chrysler popularized push-button gear selection through the 50s and 60s, though it wasn't actually a new idea. The Vulcan electric shift attempted something similar back in 1914 and flopped quickly. Chrysler's version relied on a mechanical steel cable running from dashboard to transmission, while rivals like Packard and Edsel built their own takes, with Packards running electronically. By 1965, Chrysler abandoned the feature, since it had gone from novel to just plain strange in buyers' eyes and wasn't moving units. Interestingly, the idea has resurfaced in modern vehicles, now practical thanks to fly-by-wire automatic transmission technology. Federal regulators also grew uneasy with the layout, since a poorly placed R or D button sat dangerously close together and led to a handful of accidental gear selection mishaps. That safety concern, combined with changing tastes, helped push the industry back toward the familiar column or floor-mounted shifter for the following 3 decades.
These tires feature a white stripe or fully white sidewall and were most common from the early 1900s through the mid-1980s. A small Chicago tire maker pioneered the look in 1914 for horse-drawn and chauffeured carriages. Originally, all tires were naturally white due to the zinc oxide used in the rubber, which also boosted traction. But since white rubber wore out quickly, makers began adding carbon black for durability, giving birth to black tires with white trim sidewalls. Ford started offering white walls as a factory option in 1934 for $11.25, roughly $246 in today's money. By the 1970s, the wide white wall shrank into a slimmer accent stripe as tastes moved toward a sportier, more understated look. And by the following decade, most automakers dropped the option altogether. Today, white walls survive mainly in classic car restoration circles, where enthusiasts seek them out specifically to keep a vintage build looking period authentic.
Also called curb finders, these were spring or wire attachments mounted near a car's wheels to help drivers judge their distance from the curb. Getting too close would make the feeler scrape and rattle, alerting the driver before any real damage occurred. They were especially common on cars with white wall tires, which scuffed and marked easily. Beyond passenger cars, buses used them too, helping drivers pull close enough to the curb for safe boarding. They peaked in popularity during the 1950s and 60s custom car scene, where owners often added them purely as a stylistic flourish rather than a practical necessity. As power steering and better mirrors made judging distances easier, and as parking sensors eventually took over the job electronically, the humble curb feeler quietly disappeared from showroom options.
T-tops feature 2 removable roof panels that create an open-air driving feel. Gordon Burek patented the design in 1951, and it first appeared on a 1948 prototype from the American Sports Car Company. The 1968 Chevrolet Corvette became the first American production car to offer the feature, which helped push it into the mainstream. Panels were typically made of safety glass or acrylic, sometimes body-colored and sometimes tinted black. The style flourished on sports cars and select other models from the late 60s into the early 2000s, offering convertible style freedom while keeping a center structural bar for added rigidity and safety. Storage was always the design's biggest headache, since removed panels had to ride somewhere inside the cabin or trunk, often eating up valuable cargo space. As retractable hardtops and full-power convertibles became more affordable and refined through the 1990s, they offered a smoother open-air experience without that storage hassle, and T-tops gradually faded from the market.
These cars, partially built with wood body panels, started out as practical utility vehicles in the automobile industry's early years, with passenger compartments crafted from hardwood, essentially a modernized take on old wooden hunting wagons. Woodies took off in the U.S. during the 1930s and 40s, showing up as sedans, convertibles, and everything in between. By the 1950s, though, all steel construction took over for its superior strength and safety, and by 1953, manufacturers had switched to simulated wood-grain vinyl instead of real timber, cementing the station wagon as a quintessential American classic. Real wood paneling demanded constant upkeep, since the material swelled, cracked, and rotted when exposed to rain and humidity over the years. That maintenance burden, paired with the rising popularity of surf culture that adopted the Woody Wagon as its unofficial mascot in the 1960s, cemented the look as a nostalgic style choice long after the genuine wood construction itself had disappeared from factory production lines. That's it for today's trip down memory lane. 10 more brilliant, bizarre, and beloved car features that time left behind. If this stroll through automotive history brought back a few memories, or if you spotted a feature your grandpa's old ride actually had, smash that like button and drop a comment telling us which one surprised you the most. And if you haven't seen part 1 yet, click the link on screen right now to catch the features we covered before this. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next ride down nostalgia lane. See you in the next video.